Welcome to Nibble Pop Stories. Today, let me tell you the story of Midnight's Children by Salman Rushdie. Salim is only 31, and yet, even at such a young age, he feels that time is slipping away from him. Deep inside, he carries many stories that he needs to share before his life ends. And so, with a sense of urgency, he begins to tell his tale. Salim Sinai was born on a very special night. He was born in Bombay at the exact moment India became an independent country, midnight on August 15, 1947. His birth was not an ordinary one. His life was destined to be intertwined with the history of his nation. To understand Salim's life, we must look at the story of his family, beginning with his grandfather, Adam Aziz. In 1915, after spending 5 years studying medicine in Germany, Adam returned to his homeland in Kashmir. He opened his own medical practice, ready to make a difference. However, one day, while Adam was praying on his mat, he accidentally hit his enormous cucumber sized nose on the ground. This nose was his most noticeable feature. The accident shook him so much that he decided to abandon his religious beliefs altogether. It was as if the fall had left a permanent hole in his soul, changing him forever. While Adam was away, his father suffered a stroke and his mother had to take charge of the family gem business. In those days, it was customary for women to wear a purdah, a black hood that kept them hidden from view. But because customers would not buy gemstones from someone they couldn't see, she had to remove it. Adam met an old ferryman named Tai, who not only helped him travel to see his patients, but also introduced him to new ones. On one fateful day, Tai brought Adam to the grand house of a wealthy landowner named Ghani. Ghani's daughter, Nasim, was very ill and he needed Adam's help. When Adam arrived at Ghani's house, he learned that Ghani was blind. He also found that Nasim was covered by a large white sheet with only a 7-inch hole in the center. Ghani explained that because of his daughter's exceptional purity, Adam was only allowed to examine her through that small opening. Despite this unusual situation, Adam began visiting Ghani's house repeatedly to treat Nasim. Although he never saw her face, each visit made him feel increasingly drawn to her. Finally, on the day that World War I ended, Nasim complained of a terrible migraine and asked Adam to examine her head. For the very first time, Adam saw her face clearly, and he was completely captivated by her beauty. In that same year, Adam's father died, followed shortly by his mother. Ilse Lubin, Adam's anarchist friend from Germany, came to Kashmir to visit him. She told him that her husband, Oscar, had been killed during a protest. Adam was awarded a job at Agra University and he sold his family's home and gemstone business. Adam decided to leave Kashmir and proposed to Nasim. On the same day, Ilse took Thai's ferry to a part of Dal Lake and drowned herself. Nevertheless, Adam and Nasim got married. Back in the present, Salim is cared for by his plump cook, Padma. She cooks food for him and insists on hearing the story as Salim writes it. On April 7th, 1919, a day of mourning was called by Mahatma Gandhi in protest of British rule. Adam and Nasim were stuck that day in Amritsar. When riots broke out, Adam treated the wounded with mercurochrome, which left blood like red stains on his clothing. Days later, on April 13, protesters gathered at Jallianwala Bagh, an open area that could only be reached by a narrow alley between two buildings. In a peaceful protest, The crowd moved into a compound. Adam was there by accident. British General R.E. Dwyer arrived at the opening of the alley with 50 British troops. Adam's nose began to itch furiously. As Dwyer ordered his troops to fire, Adam sneezed violently, fell to the ground, and thereby missed a bullet aimed in his direction. The troops continued to fire into the crowd. Of the 1650 rounds fired, 1516 found their mark. Returning to the present, Salim notes that his skin is beginning to crack and he knows that his death is near. He thinks about Tai, who was shot dead years later during the India Pakistan dispute over the territory of Kashmir in 1947. Salim's body is slowly breaking down, as if it reflects his deep connection to his country. He makes a living by cooking pickles and spends his nights writing his story. Padma, his caretaker, tries to be close to him, but because Salim is unable to have sex, he cannot respond to her advances. Salim continues his story. Adam and Nasim moved to Agra after getting married, but they faced problems right away. Adam disliked Nasim because of her strong religious beliefs, and Nasim was annoyed by Adam's pretentious attitude. Despite their issues, they had five children: Alia, Mumtaz, Hanif, Mustafa, and Emerald. As Nasim grew older, she became a powerful and respected woman, and people even called her Reverend Mother. In 1942, Adam teamed up with a charismatic man named Mia Abdullah, who was nicknamed the Hummingbird. Abdullah led the Free Islam Convocation, which opposed the creation of a separate Muslim state. One day, while visiting a university campus with his secretary, Nadir Khan, Mia Abdullah was attacked by a group of assassins. In the midst of the attack, the hummingbird started humming so loudly that thousands of nearby dogs rushed into the office and killed the assassins. Sadly, Mia Abdullah was already dead, but Nadir managed to escape. Adam and his family hid Nadir in their basement. Nasim gave the silent treatment to protest Nadir living in their home and possibly harming their daughter's purity. Regardless of her fears, Nadir and their middle daughter Mumtaz fell in love without even speaking a word. Nadir asked for Mumtaz's hand in marriage, and the family arranged a secret wedding between them. After that, Mumtaz happily moved into the basement but returned to the upper floors during the day to keep her husband hidden. Meanwhile, Major Zulfikar fell in love with Emerald and quietly promised to marry her. Alia began dating Ahmed Sinai, a young divorced merchant. 2 years later, Mumtaz became very ill. When Adam checked on her, he discovered that she was still a virgin. Mumtaz defended Nadir by saying that a good marriage did not depend on sex. Suddenly, Emerald ran out to Major Zulfikar's office to tell him that Nadir was living in her father's basement. Zulfikar stormed the basement with 15 men, but he found it empty. The only clue was a letter left for Mumtaz that read, Talak, Talak, Talak. In English, it said, I divorce thee, I divorce thee, I divorce thee. Coincidentally, this happened on the same day the United States dropped the atomic bomb on Japan. Zulfikar was furious. He agreed not to press charges against Adam for hiding Nadir if Adam allowed him to marry Emerald. In January 1946, Zulfikar and Emerald were married, and at the wedding, Ahmed fell in love with Mumtaz. By June, they were married, and Ahmed decided that his wife should take the name Amina for their new life together. Ahmed and Amina moved to Delhi. Although they were both initially attracted to each other, Amina found it hard to forget Nadir. She tried to love her husband, but month by month, their house begins to look like a dark basement, and Ahmed gradually began to look more like Nadir as he gained weight and lost his hair. Since they did not have any children yet, Amina felt even more miserable. One morning, two of Ahmed's business associates, Mr. Mustafa Kemal and Mr. S.P. Butt, arrived at their house. Ahmed supplied leather for military jackets. Kemal traded in rice, tea, and lentils, and Mr. S.P. Butt made matches. They told Ahmed that one of his warehouses had caught fire. Apparently, an anti Muslim group called Ravana was trying to destroy Muslim businesses unless they paid protection money. Outside Amina's home, a young Hindu boy named Lafifa Das was showing off his peep show box filled with postcards from around the world. When a neighborhood boy identified him as Hindu, the local Muslim residents quickly attacked him. Amina chased the mob away, pulled Lafifa inside, and declared that anyone who tried to hurt him would have to go through her, a newly pregnant woman. In return for saving his life, Lafifa offered to take Amina to see his cousin, the great seer who could tell the fortune of her unborn child. Days later, Amina Sinai sets off to visit the seer, Lifafa's cousin Ram Seth. When Ram touched her pregnant belly, he fell into a trance and predicted that her son would be as old as his motherland and would have two heads, two knees, and a nose. Amina returned home and decided to keep the prediction a secret from Ahmed. Meanwhile, Ahmed was in financial trouble, so he decided to move to Bombay, where land was cheap. Although Amina was unhappy about the move, Ahmed collected his insurance money from the burnt warehouse and sold his leather business, preparing to start a new real estate business in Bombay. On June 4, as Earl Mountbatten announced the partition of India into two separate nations, Ahmed and Amina boarded a train for Bombay. Back in the present, Salim complains that nobody takes his health problems seriously, especially since a doctor has dismissed his claim that his skin is cracking. Padma insists that Salim continue his story and hold back his complaints. Salim cannot help but wonder whether his mother's intentions were pure when she went to see Ram Seth. There were ancient fishermen who worshipped the goddess Mumba Devi. They called their land Mumbai until it was invaded by the Portuguese and renamed Bombahia. In 1633, Methwold, a British officer of the East India Company, arrived in Bombahia and envisioned a British Bombay. Thus, Bombay was born, its legacy passed down through generations of the Methwold family. As soon as Amina and Ahmed arrived in Bombay, they settled in one of the many houses owned by William Methwold. With independence approaching, the colonists were given 70 days to leave the country. However, Methwold, before departing, imposed conditions on the new tenants. They had to purchase all the furniture, and the legal transfer of the property would not occur until midnight on August 15. The tenants also had to attend a nightly cocktail with him in the garden. The tenants despised Methwold's conditions, yet each of them slowly began to get used to Methwold's ways, and some even adopted fake British accents and habits. The Times of India announced a prize for any child born at the exact moment of independence. Amina remembered the prophecy and knew that her son would win the prize. Wee Willie Winkie, who played the accordion at the cocktail party, also announced that his wife, Vanita, was set to give birth on August 15 at midnight. Salim then told Padma that the child Winky believed was his was actually the biological son of Methwold. In the meantime, a midwife named Mary Pereira confessed to a young priest about her relationship with an orderly named Joseph de Costa, who had begun committing acts of violence against the British. It was August 13, 1947. Earl Mountbatten, the last British Viceroy of India, was preparing to leave the country. And Jinnah, the founder of Pakistan, was marking the beginning of his new nation a full day before India's independence. That same night, alone in Agra, Adam Aziz opened an old tin trunk. Inside, he found faded magazines, linens, what is to be done, an ancient prayer mat, and the blood stained perforated sheet. Adam noticed that moths had eaten much of the sheet, so that its infamous hole had become just one of many. Meanwhile, at Methold's estate, Wee Willie Winkie's wife Vanita went into labor. As the sun set on August 15th, Methwold stood in the center courtyard of his estate, saluting the landscape and the setting sun. Hours later, Amina went into labor as well. In adjacent rooms at the nursing home, both Vanita and Amina gave birth to boys at midnight, with Mary Pereira assisting at the deliveries. At the same time, the Bombay police were searching for a dangerous criminal named Joseph DeCosta. Heartbroken and thinking of Joseph, Mary Pereira carried out her own small act of rebellion. She swapped the name tags on the cribs, exchanging the identities of the rich and the poor, and prayed, "Love me, Joseph." A moment later, 3 minutes after India's independence, Vanita hemorrhaged and died. Now the Sinai family was set to raise the child who was biologically Vanita's and William's, while the poor Winky was left unknowingly raising Amina and Ahmed's child. 3 days later, overwhelmed by guilt, Mary quit Dr. Nalikar's hospital and offered her services to Amina as a babysitter. At that point, Padma interrupts the story, calling Salim a liar. Salim explains that even after his parents discovered what Marie Pereira had done, they could not undo the past, so he remained their son. He also mentions a letter from the Prime Minister, which he buried in a cactus garden along with a newspaper article titled Midnight's Child. The Times of India interviewed Amina and awarded only 100 rupees. Salim recalls a painting of Walter Raleigh that hung above his crib when he was a baby. In the painting, a fisherman pointed off into the distance, and Salim wonders what the fisherman might be pointing at. Amina and Ahmed brought Salim home from the hospital, including his umbilical cord, in an old pickle jar. Salim wasn't a beautiful baby, but he was very large, with an enormous cucumber nose. Strangely, he barely made any noise and hardly ever blinked. Amina and Mary, who had become like two-headed mother to him, took turns opening and closing his eyes, which were a striking Kashmiri blue. Secretly, Amina still loved Nadir Khan. She often dreamed that it was really Nadir who fathered Salim. Her dreams felt so real that she began to question who Salim's true father was. Because of this, Salim came to think of himself as having four fathers: Nadir, Willie, Methwold, and Ahmed Sinai. Wee Willie Winkie continued to perform at the compound, and he brought his son Shiva along, who was known for his large knees. Feeling neglected by his wife, Ahmed hired Anglo girls as secretaries and flirted with them until they were forced to quit. Ahmed, together with his neighbor Dr. Nalikar, began mass producing standing tetrapods to mark the reclaimed land beneath the sea. Although they kept this venture secret, the government soon found out and froze Ahmed's assets. Amina comforted Ahmed during that difficult time, and that comfort led to the conception of Salim's sister, who later became known as the Brass Monkey. During the winter of 1948, Ahmed's frozen assets made life difficult for the family. To make ends meet, they rented the top floor of their house to a snake expert, Dr. Sharpstecker. Adam and Reverend Mother also moved in to help Amina and Ahmed. Meanwhile, Amina secretly stole money to visit the racetrack where she won repeatedly. She used some of this money to pay their neighbor Ismail to fight the government's freezing of Ahmed's assets. Salim, as a child, loved playing snakes and ladders. To him, the game perfectly mirrored ups and downs of life. For example, Salim's uncle became a successful filmmaker in Bombay. However, on the night of his film's premiere, Mahatma Gandhi was assassinated. The family worried that the assassin would be Muslim, which would make life harder for them, but it turned out the killer was Hindu. Musa, their house bearer, stole from them but was caught. Amina chose not to press charges and Musa left, placing a curse on the house. One day, Mary Pereira, the ayah, noticed a man walking across the rooftops. When the police arrived, they shot him on sight. Unfortunately, the man turned out to be her lover, Joseph de Costa, who had been planning to blow up the area as an act of terrorism. Around the same time, Amina gave birth to a daughter who came to be known as the brass monkey because of her red hair. Salim fell ill with typhoid but was saved by Dr. Sharpstekker's snake venom. This taught Salim that snakes were not always as evil as they seemed. Finally, Ismail won Ahmed's court case and the government unfroze Ahmed's assets. Over time, Brass Monkey started seeking attention. When Salim turned 9, he began attending school with other local boys like Sone Ibrahim, Cyrus Dubash, Ice Slice, and Hair Oil Sabarmati. He felt the pressure of his parents' expectations. To escape his family, he would hide in the washing chest where he could let his imagination run free. One day, while hiding, Salim overheard his mother in the bathroom. She received a call, sobbed, and kept saying, Nadir. Unaware of Salim's presence, she took off her sari. When Salim sniffed and his nose twitched, his mother found him and punished him with a day of silence. During that quiet day, Salim started hearing voices in his head. These voices became clearer and he realized he could control them, like turning a radio up or down. He believed these voices were a holy sign and that he was a messenger of God. Salim told his family that angels were speaking to him, just as they had to Muhammad and Moses. Everyone got angry, and his father hit him so hard that Salim lost some hearing in his left ear. That evening, Amina remembered the words of Ram, the prophet, who had said, Washing will hide him, and voices will guide him. After a few days, Salim realized the voices in his head weren't divine, but the thoughts of people across India. He also heard the voices of other children born at midnight on Independence Day. Afraid of his father's reaction, he kept this a secret. Salim started hiding in the broken clock tower Joseph de Costa had tried to blow up. From there, he could hear the thoughts of strangers, movie stars, politicians, cab drivers, and tourists. He used this gift to cheat on tests and improve his grades by listening to the class genius Cyrus the Great. Meanwhile, in the summer of 1956, language marches filled the city streets. Protesters wanted Bombay divided along linguistic lines, separating Marathi and Gujarati speakers. Dr. Nalikar angered a group of protesters who threw him and his concrete tetrapod into the ocean. His distant relatives took over his business and pushed Ahmed out of the tetrapod company. Ahmed fell deeper into alcoholic depression. Back to the present, Salim accuses Padma of being in love with him. Padma is offended by his insensitive approach. When Salim compares his story to the Ramayana, written by the Hindu elephant god Ganesh, Padma storms out. Salim realizes he has grown fond of Padma and misses her. He also mentions that Winky likely died during these early years, leaving Shiva as a street orphan. Salim developed a crush on a neighborhood girl named Evelyn Lilith Burns, who was American. However, Evelyn liked Salim's best friend, Sonny Ibrahim, who in turn liked the brass monkey. Evelyn was a tough girl who quickly impressed the children of Methwold's estate by riding her bicycle while doing a headstand. Salim asked Sonny to talk to Evelyn on his behalf and to impress her. Salim tried to learn how to ride a bike, but Evelyn didn't respond. Salim then used his powers to enter Evelyn's mind. He went deep until he saw an image of Evelyn holding a blood soaked knife near her dead mother. Evelyn felt Salim in her mind and tried to push him out mentally. Finally, she pushed him out, and Salim ended up falling down a hill into the middle of a language march. To calm the crowd, Salim recited a rhyme in Gujarati. The crowd moved on, singing his rhyme, until they encountered a group of pro Gujarati marchers. Violence broke out, throats were slit, and in the end, the state of Bombay was partitioned. Back in the present, Padma finally returns to Salim. In an attempt to cure his impotence, she adds herbs to his food that makes him delirious and sick for a week. In 1957, Salim turned 10. He found the other children, who were born at midnight on August 15, had magical powers. For example, a boy from Kerala could step in and out of mirrors. A Goanese girl could multiply fish, and some even could change their shape. One boy in the Vindhyas could shrink and grow at will. Another child in Kashmir could change from male to female. A boy in Shillong never forgot anything he had seen or heard, and a girl in Calcutta could hurt others with her words. Out of 1001 children, 420 had died by the time Salim discovered them, leaving 581 midnight children alive. Among these, Salim and Shiva were the strongest. Shiva had the gift of war, while Salim could see into the hearts and minds of others. Meanwhile, Ahmed sank deeper into alcoholism and isolation. However, by trading stocks, he managed to improve his financial situation. After his last secretary left, Mary convinced her sister Alice to come and work for Ahmed. Mary herself was in trouble. Joseph de Costa's ghost haunted her. She realized that the only way to get rid of him was to confess her crime of switching the babies. But she never confessed because her love for Salim was too strong and she was sure that a confession would hurt him. On the other hand, Salim organized a mental meeting called the Midnight Children's Conference. Shiva wanted both him and Salim to lead, but Salim wanted the meeting to be democratic. He had a few supporters, like Parvati the witch. One child, Shomitra, who could time travel, warned that the conference would do no good, but the others ignored him. Salim noticed that Amina became nervous every time the phone rang. He followed her around the city one day. Amina stopped at the Pioneer Cafe, a restaurant where many actors tried to find work with nearby film studio executives. In the afternoon, the cafe became a hangout for the Communist Party. Salim watched as his mother sat across from Nadir Khan and they shared an indirect kiss through a drinking glass. Nadir had since changed his name to Qasim Khan and he was an official candidate for the Communist Party. Salim became incredibly upset that his mother was having an affair, but he kept his emotions in check. In the election, Qasim Khan was defeated, but the Communist Party became the single largest opposition to the All India Congress. There was a severe water shortage in the city, and stray cats searching for water overran Methwold's estate. Armed with a Daisy air gun, Evie ended the plague of cats by shooting them. The brass monkey, who could speak to animals, was furious. She called Evie outside and then pounced on her. The two fought terribly, and a few weeks later, Evie's father sent her back to America. Months afterward, Evie wrote Salim a letter confessing that she had once stabbed an old woman who complained about her assault on the cats. Salim had never liked Shiva, But he could not keep him out of the Midnight Children's Conference. He turned his mind into an open forum where all the children could speak to each other. At school, things became difficult for Salim. A geography teacher made fun of Salim's face, saying that his nose stuck out like India's peninsula. The teacher then ripped out a chunk of Salim's hair when his nose dripped on the teacher's hand. Later, at the school dance, two bullies chased Salim. In his haste to escape, he slammed his hand in a door, severing the top of his middle finger. He was rushed to the hospital and his parents were asked to donate blood. However, their blood types did not match his. That was when Ahmed and Amina discovered that they were not Salim's biological family. Ahmed took his anger out on Amina and accused her of having an affair. When they left to fight in private, Salim heard the sound of a slap. Sitting alone afterward, Salim realized that most of what matters in one's life happens in his absence. After leaving the hospital, Salim didn't return home. Instead, he and Mary went to live with filmmaker Uncle Hanif and his beautiful wife, Pia. Pia was unhappy because Hanif only wanted to make realistic films about India's poverty, so no one was investing in his ideas. They managed to get by because Homi Katrak still paid Hanif a studio salary. Living with Hanif and Pia was enjoyable for Salim. His aunt and uncle treated him like their own son, and Mary kept feeding him delicious treats. Salim hit puberty early and began to notice Pia's beauty. She often hugged him and he enjoyed it. Everything seemed fine until one night when Homi Katrak gave Salim a note to pass to Pia, warning that if he told anyone his tongue would be cut out. Unable to give her the note that night, Salim went to bed with it still in his hand and later had a nightmare about his classmate Jimmy being murdered. Pia then invited him to sleep between her and Hanif, and there Salim quietly slipped the note into her hand. The next day, Salim learned that Jimmy had died from a sudden heart attack. He returned home to find Pia upset. When he read her thoughts, he discovered that Homi Katrak had lost interest in her. Pia threw herself onto her bed and Salim tried to comfort her. But things took a turn when he started to touch her and she slapped him, calling him a pervert. Soon after, Amina arrived to take Salim home. During the drive, she asked him to be good to his father since Ahmed had been feeling unhappy. Salim remembered his mother's affair and felt the urge for revenge. After returning to Buckingham Villa, Mary discovers that Joseph's ghost has decayed. He is missing an ear, a toe, and most of his teeth, and there is a large hole in his stomach. Joseph tells Mary that he is being held completely responsible for her crime until she confesses. Over at Methwold Estate, Salim notices that his sister, the brass monkey, has become the new favorite in the household. But she doesn't enjoy the attention. In fact, she even converts to Christianity just to upset her parents. But they ignore her attempts to provoke them. Meanwhile, the Midnight Children Conference starts falling apart as the children divide themselves by race, class, and religion. Salim and Shiva openly argue about the conference. Salim pleads for tolerance and unity, while Shiva mocks him as a naive, rich kid full of unrealistic ideals. Salim learns that his neighbor, Commander Sabarmati's wife Leela, is having an affair with Homi Katrak. Still haunted by his own mother's affair, Salim decides to expose them. He cuts out letters from newspaper headlines and arranges them into a note that reads, Commander Sabarmati, why does your wife go to Kolaba Causeway on Sunday mornings? He hides the note in the commander's clothes. When Commander Sabarmati finds it, he hires a detective to follow his wife. Once he confirms the affair, he confronts Leela and Homi, shooting them both. He kills Homi and seriously injures Leela. Afterward, he tries to turn himself in by approaching a traffic cop, but the officer runs away when he sees the gun. Left alone, Commander Sabarmati starts directing traffic himself until the police arrive to arrest him. Ismail Ibrahim, the lawyer who once defended Ahmed, agrees to defend Commander Sabarmati too. At first, the public views the commander as a hero, and the jury acquits him. But the judge overturns the verdict, and the president refuses to pardon him. And Salim feels satisfied, seeing this as a lesson for unfaithful women like his mother. Not long after, the Sinai family's phone rings one afternoon. Amina answers and says firmly, "No, nobody by that name here. Please believe me and don't call again." In the end, Commander Sabarmati is sentenced to 30 years in prison, while Leela, who is still alive, moves out. The residents of Methwold Estate begin selling their homes to Dr. Nalika's relatives, who plan to build a massive mansion. Ahmed refuses to sell, leaving Salim's family isolated with only Dr. Shapstekar and Dr. Nalika's women, who buy up all the other houses and apartments. Later, Pia calls the family to let them know that Hanif has died by suicide. The entire family gathers at the house for a 40-day mourning period. Surprisingly, Pia doesn't show much grief. Salim apologizes to her for his inappropriate behavior earlier, and Pia explains that she refuses to mourn because Hanif always hated melodrama, even in his films. Reverend Mother announces that Pia will move to Pakistan with her, where she plans to buy a petrol pump. On the 22nd day of the mourning period, Adam Aziz claims he saw God. Mary, however, believes that what Adam actually saw was the ghost of Joseph de Costa. Overcome with guilt, Mary confesses to switching the children at birth. Afterward, she leaves to stay with her mother in Goa, though her sister Alice stays behind to help Ahmed. After Mary's confession, Salim starts avoiding the Midnight Children's Conference. He is scared that if Shiva finds out the truth, he will claim his birthright. Meanwhile, Ahmed is still drunk and angry about the midnight switch. He takes out his anger on Amina, constantly mistreating her. Reverend Mother advises Amina to leave Ahmed and take her two children away. So Amina, Salim, and the brass monkey move to Pakistan to live with Emerald and General Zulfikar. There, they are treated poorly because of their lower status, but General Zulfikar takes a liking to Salim. He thinks Salim is more manly than his own son Zafar. However, Salim notices that his ability to communicate with the Midnight Children's Conference has been blocked. In this new land, he can no longer connect with the other children. One evening, General Zulfikar hosts an important dinner attended by high ranking military officials. During the meal, the general allows his son Zafar and Salim to sit at the table with the men. The commander in chief of the army, General Ayub, declares that the government has failed and announces plans for the military to take over Pakistan. When Zulfikar asks Salim to help plan, Salim assists the officers by using pepper shakers and condiment jars to map out troop movements. On November 1, General Zulfikar takes Salim to the president's house, where Salim watches as the general forces the half asleep president out of bed and onto a plane. During this time, tensions between India and Pakistan grow, and conflicts along the border with China increase. Over the next 4 years that Salim and his family live in Pakistan, the brass monkey becomes deeply religious and converts to Islam. On her 14th birthday, she is asked to sing for her guests. Her beautiful voice leaves everyone amazed. From that moment on, the brass monkey becomes known as Jamila Singer. On September 9, 1962, India's defense minister decides to use force against the Chinese army. On the same day, Amina receives a telegram saying that Ahmed has suffered a heart attack. The family moves back to India. As Ahmed begins to recover, he starts becoming a better man. He stops drinking and no longer mistreats his family. With Amina's loving care, Ahmed finally falls in love with his wife. While India prepares for war with China, Salim reconvenes the Midnight Children's Conference. But once China begins attacking India, the children grow upset with Salim for not including Shiva in the group. The pressure mounts as the war continues, but in the end, China wins. The children blame Salim for being secretive and elitist. Over the next month, they leave him one by one. The day after India's defeat, Salim's parents take him to the hospital for a sinus operation. After the surgery, he realizes that his magical ability to connect with others is gone. However, he discovers a new magical sense. He can smell things like never before. Not only can he detect the tiniest scents, but he can also sense people's emotions through his nose. Amina convinces Ahmed that they should move to Pakistan to join her sisters, and they sell their house on Methwold's estate to the Narlikar women. On their last day in Bombay, Salim takes the letter from the Prime Minister, the newspaper photo, and an old tin globe and buries them on the property. The family arrives in Karachi on February 9. Soon after, Jamila begins her singing career, while Salim enjoys the newfound pleasure of being able to smell for the first time in his life. In Pakistan, Ahmed builds a new home for the family. Before laying the foundation, he buries the umbilical cord from Salim's birth under the house. Ahmed also buys a towel factory, names it after his wife, and proudly declares that one day he will produce the most famous towel in the world. Soon after, Salim learns about the death of his grandfather, Adam Aziz. The relationship between India and Pakistan continues to worsen and the borders close. As a result, Salim and his family can't travel to Agra to mourn Adam, and Reverend Mother is unable to come to Pakistan either. Meanwhile, Jamila becomes the most celebrated singer in Pakistan. However, she always wears a white burqa to cover herself. Even when she performs on stage, she sings behind a white curtain with only a small hole cut out for her lips. As Jamila's fame grows, Salim begins to develop romantic feelings for her. One day he visits a prostitute but runs away when he realizes she is wearing his sister's scent. Around the same time, the son of a prince falls in love with Jamila and asks Salim to help him express his feelings. The prince's son gives Salim a love charm meant for Jamila. That night, Salim sneaks into his sister's room and presses the charm into her palm while confessing his own love for her. For a brief moment, the charm seems to work, but Jamila is horrified and ashamed, even though she and Salim are in blood related. After that, the two grew distant from each other. After Adam's death, Reverend Mother and Pia moved to Pakistan. Reverend Mother doesn't mourn or even mention Adam, who had long refused to leave India. The two women open a petrol station. However, Ahmed's towel factory starts failing and he suffers a stroke that leaves him partially paralyzed. Life in Karachi becomes increasingly difficult for Salim, and for the first time in their lives, Salim and Jamila avoid each other completely. In January 1965, Amina discovers she is pregnant again. Unfortunately, India and Pakistan go to war for the second time, largely over the disputed region of Kashmir. Zafar is sent to guard the run of Kutch. He and the other Pakistani soldiers are tasked with holding the border until reinforcements arrive. On his final night there, Zafar is terrified when he sees a group of smugglers crossing the area. After returning home, he blames his father, Zulfikar, for his traumatic experience. In a fit of anger, Zafar sneaks into his father's room and slits his throat with a long carved smuggler's knife. On the night of September 22, air raids strike all over Pakistan. Three bombs hit Rawalpindi. The first bomb kills Reverend Mother and Pia. The second destroys Zafar's jail, effectively freeing him. The third hits Emerald's house, killing her as well. Another bomb kills Salim's mother, father, unborn sibling, and Aunt Alia. Yet another bomb destroys the unfinished house Ahmed had been building for the family. As Salim's house collapses, the silver spittoon that once belonged to his grandfather strikes him on the head. This blow erases his memory entirely, leaving him feeling as though he has been purified. Salim comes to believe that the Indo Pakistan War of 1965 happened solely to wipe out his family. Jamila hands Salim over to the army's care. Salim thinks she did this as punishment for his feelings towards her. He is sent to a mysterious camp in the Muri Hills with no memory but an extraordinary sense of smell. Salim becomes known as the man dog. He uses his nose to track down rebels, sniffing them out with incredible precision. Three new recruits, Ayuba, Farooq, and Shahid, are assigned to work alongside him. In East Pakistan, Sheikh Mujib, the leader of the Bangladeshi independence movement, is pushing hard to form his own government. On March 15, 1971, Pakistani troops are flown to Dhaka. Once in the city, Salim leads the soldiers to Sheikh Mujib. They give him one of Mujib's old shirts and he uses it to track him down by scent. As they drive through the streets, they witness horrific scenes Pakistani troops murdering, raping, and looting the town. 10 million refugees flee from Bangladesh into India, creating what some call the biggest migration in human history. Despite the horrors they see, Salim and his unit follow orders without question. Later, Salim and his team begin tracking an unknown enemy. Using his heightened sense of smell, Salim leads them deep into the Sundarbans, a vast jungle on the border between Bangladesh and India. Once they reach the forest, the group gets lost in the dense jungle. They are extremely sick and begin seeing the ghosts of people they have killed. The three boys start hearing voices from their pasts and distant families. Salim, however, remembers nothing until a poisonous snake bites him in the heel. After 2 days on the brink of death, Salim's memory suddenly floods back. He tells the three boys his entire life story, but in the end, he can't even remember his own name. The four wander through the jungle and stumble upon an ancient Hindu temple dedicated to the multi limbed goddess Kali. Inside, four beautiful women visit them and sleep with them night after night. They spend many days in the temple, but soon the women begin to grow hollow and translucent. As the temple starts collapsing, they flee back to their boat, where a massive tidal wave carries them out of the Sundarbans. When Salim and the boys reach a deserted village, they discover Mukti Bahini snipers targeting members of the Pakistani army. Moments later, a bullet strikes Ayuba, killing him instantly. Salim, Shahid, and Farooq flee the scene. In December, they arrive at a field outside Dhaka, littered with rotting corpses. A peasant tells Salim that India has joined the war, led by a man with enormous, powerful knees. Suddenly, a sniper's bullet kills Farooq. Salim stumbles across the field and comes upon a tangled pyramid of bodies. To his horror, he realizes they are the bodies of his childhood friends. On December 15, 1971, Tiger Niazi, the Pakistani army officer leading the war against Bangladesh, surrenders to his Indian counterpart, an old friend, Sam Manekshaw. After Pakistan's surrender to India, Salim and Shahid return to Dhaka. But even though the war is over, soldiers continue to rape and kill people in the city. Suddenly, a grenade is thrown through the air and Shahid is blown apart. As the Indian army marches through the city, a group of magicians leads the way. Salim spots Parvati the witch among them. When Parvati sees him, she shouts out his name, and just like that, Salim remembers who he is. Parvati smuggles Salim out of Dhaka and back to India, hiding him in her magic basket. By the time Salim arrives in India, Indira Gandhi's new Congress party has secured a two-thirds majority in the National Assembly. Salim vows to save the country from Mrs. Gandhi's control. Instead of staying with Parvati and the other magicians, Salim goes to his last remaining uncle, Mustafa Aziz, a senior civil servant. There, he learns that Jamila had begun openly criticizing the Pakistani government after her brother went missing. She disappeared soon after, and Salim dreams that she ended up in a Catholic convent. Later, his uncle receives a top secret folder labeled Project MCC from Prime Minister Indira Gandhi's son. Salim begins to suspect that the Gandhi family has somehow gained the ability to replicate themselves, which is why they have been pushing birth control on everyone else. The next day, Parvati the witch visits Salim. That evening, Salim's aunt catches him in bed with Parvati and throws them both out of the house. Salim moves in with Parvati and Picture Singh, a famous snake charmer who also holds public gatherings to talk about socialism and communism. Parvati tries hard to make Salim fall in love with her, but he can't get over his feelings for his sister. Salim claims he can't marry because he is impotent. Since Salim refuses to marry her, Parvati casts a spell to summon Shiva. After the war, Shiva became a national hero, known for his skill in battle, especially his powerful legs. Over time, he grew more refined and sophisticated, earning a reputation as a great lover and seducer. He slept with wives of high society, but he always lost interest in them the moment they became pregnant. Many children were born from his affairs. One woman even told him that he had become the laughing stock of elite women. This made Shiva bitter and cruel toward the upper class. Shiva takes Parvati back to his barracks and for a while they are happy together. But when Parvati tells him she is pregnant with his child, Shiva loses interest in her. He starts sleeping with prostitutes, trying to balance the number of children he has fathered in the slums with those from wealthy families. Meanwhile, the political situation grows darker as students and workers begin protesting government corruption. These protests lead to the rise of an opposition party called the People's Front. Parvati eventually breaks the spell and returns to Picture Singh and Salim, who have been spreading the message of communism. Picture convinces Salim to marry Parvati, arguing that she shouldn't have a fatherless child. Parvati converts to Islam and changes her name to Laila. On February 23, 1975, Salim marries Parvati. At midnight on June 25, the Prime Minister declares a state of emergency. She arrests her opponents and censors the press. At the same moment, Parvati gives birth to a child with enormous ears. For months, life is tough for Salim's new family. His son, Adam, suffers from tuberculosis. One morning, a group of bulldozers arrives, claiming to be part of a beautification program. Everyone must leave because the ghetto is declared a public eyesore. Soldiers drag people into vans and rumors spread that the government is sterilizing them. In the chaos, Salim loses Parvati and Picture Singh. Major Shiva shows up and captures Salim. Parvati dies, and by the end of the day, nothing remains of the ghetto. Salim is taken to Banaras and locked in the palace of the widows, located on the bank of the Ganges. Slowly, the prison fills up with his fellow midnight children. One by one, they are taken into operating rooms and sterilized. The doctors remove testicles and entire wombs, and as a result, the Midnight children lose all their magical powers. Salim learns that Shiva willingly undergoes a vasectomy. This is ironic because Shiva's namesake is the Hindu god associated with creation and procreation. Months later, the prisoners are released. The Midnight children silently go their separate ways, never to see each other again. The Prime Minister calls for elections but ends up losing. Back in Delhi, Salim wanders around until he eventually finds Picture Singh, holding a small boy who is 21 months old. Salim and Picture Singh take on the responsibility of raising Parvati's son together. One day, Picture hears about a man who claims to be the greatest snake charmer in India. Determined to challenge him, Picture Singh sets off for Bombay with Salim and Adam. When they arrive in Bombay, Salim notices that the city has changed completely. The big showdown takes place at the Midnight Confidential Club. Picture wins the battle but collapses right after his victory and is carried out. Later, a waitress brings Salim and Picture Singh bowls of bright green chutney. Salim immediately recognizes the taste. The waitress explains that the chutney comes from Bragaza Pickles, a factory located north of town near the area of the old Mithwold estate. When they arrive at the factory, Salim meets Padma for the first time. He also discovers that Mary Pereira, his former ayah, runs the company. As Salim reconnects with Mary, Adam Sinai finally speaks his first word, abracadabra. Salim decides to stay on at the factory. Mary becomes Adam's ayah once again, and Salim takes on the role of manager at the pickle factory. Back in the present, Salim vows to preserve his stories just as he preserves Mary's chutney. He labels the last jar abracadabra. Padma insists that Salim marry her in Kashmir and he agrees. With that, Salim decides to start writing his future. He begins by describing his wedding in Kashmir, where he imagines himself crumbling into 600 million pieces of dust, trampled on by Adam Sinai and the other guests. So we have reached the end of Midnight's Children by Salman Rushdie. If today's episode makes you pick the book up and read it, that would be such a rewarding experience for you, I promise. So I leave you all for our next episode. In the meantime, if you like our content, do like, share, and subscribe to our channel. This is Monami Mukherjee signing off. Good night.